My name is Helena Ward. I'm 36 years old, and the morning after I buried my husband, his mother had me served with papers asking a judge to take my children from me. I was standing in our front hall in Pine Hollow, Ohio, holding my son Theo's blue lunch bag with the whale patch, while my daughter Ivy tried to zip her black funeral cardigan over her pajamas. Colleen Ward looked past me at the process server and said, "A woman who has to be carried through a funeral can't carry 2 children." What she wanted was not only Ivy and Theo, though she said their names like prayer beads. She also wanted control of the $2 million life insurance payout Graham had left for them. In the petition, she called me unstable, forgetful, financially reckless, and too broken by grief to make safe decisions. She brought 4 letters she claimed Graham had signed before he died, letters that made me look like a danger in my own home. I did not argue with her on the porch, because there was one detail on the service papers that did not match the morning I was living through. I also had not yet opened the envelope Graham's lawyer told me not to lose. Weeks later, in courtroom 4C, Colleen would watch a small black video file play on a court monitor, and for the first time since I had known her, she would have nothing ready to say. That morning, though, I was still just a mother trying to get 2 children to school. Theo was 6. Ivy was 9. They had slept in the same bed the night after the funeral, curled back to back like 2 commas. I had found them at 5:30 in the morning, with Graham's old gray sweatshirt between them, the one he wore every Saturday when he made pancakes badly and insisted the burned edges were caramelized. I had not slept. There were flowers on every flat surface in the house, lilies I had not asked for, white roses from Graham's office, a basket of muffins from a neighbor, and one arrangement from Colleen's church group with a card that said, "The Ward family stands together." I remember staring at that card while the coffee maker clicked and spat. I packed Ivy's lunch because she hated the cafeteria when she was upset. Applesauce pouch, pretzel sticks, turkey sandwich, crusts off. A napkin with a tiny heart in the corner because Graham used to draw them, and I did not know whether continuing that would comfort her or hurt her. I packed Theo's blue insulated bag with the whale patch because he would not use any other one. The zipper had a crack in it. Graham had fixed it twice with needle-nose pliers and said it had character. When the doorbell rang, I thought it was another casserole. I know people mean well with food, but grief turns the refrigerator into a museum. Every container has a name on masking tape. Every lid feels like proof that people know what to do for exactly 3 days. The man at the door wore a brown jacket and held a clipboard. Colleen stood behind him in a cream wool coat, her hair sprayed smooth, her lipstick fresh in a way that made my stomach tighten. My father-in-law, Ellis, waited beside her with both hands in his pockets. He looked at the porch light instead of at me. The man said my name. I said yes. He handed me the papers. I knew what they were before I read the first page. Not because I expected it, because Colleen smiled like she had already won. Welcome back to the Madeline Files, where the quiet parts of a family finally make it into the record. If you have ever been treated like the person who should carry everything and still be grateful for the wait, stay with me. This is not a story about screaming in a courtroom. It is about what happens when people mistake your silence for permission and then sign their names to the lie. Tell me where you're listening from, and if this story finds you at the right time, I hope you hear the part that was meant for you. Graham and I met when we were 27 in the fluorescent waiting room of an urgent care clinic on a Tuesday night in February. I was there because I had sliced my thumb open cutting a bagel. He was there because he had sprained his wrist, slipping on ice outside the hardware store. He kept trying to fill out the intake form with his left hand and dropping the pen. I finally took it from him and said, "Name?" He blinked at me and said, "You're bleeding," I said, "and you're losing a fight with a clipboard." That was Graham. He laughed like a porch light coming on. Not loud, just warm enough to notice. He was a civil engineer for the county, the kind of man who knew which bridges needed repair and which pothole complaints were exaggerated. He labeled leftovers with dates. He sang off-key in the car. When Ivy was born, he cried so hard the nurse asked if he needed orange juice. When Theo came 6 years later, he held him against his chest and whispered, "Buddy, you are late, and we have been waiting." Colleen cried too, but differently. She cried in a way that made sure everyone saw her. At the hospital, she leaned over my bed while I was still shaking from labor and said, "You did beautifully, sweetheart. We'll take it from here." I remember that sentence because I was too tired to answer it. Colleen had a way of making possession sound like help. She did not ask to hold the baby. She announced that she was giving me a break. She did not ask whether we wanted visitors. She said, "Family doesn't need invitations." When I breastfed Ivy, Colleen told people I was being private. When I gave Ivy formula after an infection knocked me flat, Colleen told people I gave up too quickly. Every version of me was wrong, but softly, in a tone other people mistook for concern. Ellis was gentler. He worked at a small accounting office for 38 years and smelled faintly of peppermint gum and printer toner. He loved Graham. He loved the children, I believe that. But Ellis had built his whole life around stepping sideways when Colleen stepped forward. He would catch my eye sometimes after she said something C-carp, and for 1 second his face would change. It would say, "I heard that." Then he would reach for his coffee. Dana, Graham's older sister, was Colleen without the polish. She had married a dentist, lived in a brick house with white shutters, and posted photographs of Sunday dinners she did not cook. She called me hell in a tone that made it sound like a mistake. When Graham and I bought our small blue house instead of moving closer to Colleen, Dana said, "I guess some women need a little kingdom." I worked as a senior claims integrity analyst for a benefits administration company. That sounds more impressive than it felt most days. Mostly, I reviewed disputed life insurance, disability, and survivor benefit claims. I compared forms. I checked signatures. I looked for timelines that did not line up. I read medical notes, employer certifications, policy riders, beneficiary designations, notary stamps, bank records, and the strange little mistakes people make when they think paperwork is just paperwork. Colleen called me the form girl. At Graham's 42nd birthday dinner, when he was still healthy, she set it across a table at Bellini's while cutting her chicken piccata into tiny pieces. "You're so good with forms, Helena," she said. "I can't even read those insurance packets." But family decisions are different. That's heart, not paperwork. Graham looked up from helping Theo spear a noodle. "Mom." "What?" she said, smiling. "I'm complimenting her." I smiled too because that was what I did then. I had learned that if I pushed back, the room got heavy and somehow I became the difficult one. So I let little things pass. The wrong nickname, the comments about the house, the way Colleen told Ivy, "You have ward eyes," as if I had contributed nothing but transportation. I should have known then that Colleen did not see family as love. She saw it as ownership. That is one of the few things I can say plainly now, because it took me years to let myself say it at all. Graham got sick in late September, 2 years before the funeral. At first, it was back pain, then night sweats, then blood work, then a call from his doctor at 7:42 on a Friday evening, the kind of call that does not wait until Monday. Stage 4 lymphoma, aggressive, treatable, they said, because doctors are careful with hope. Not curable, not then, treatable. The first week after diagnosis, our house filled with ward family voices. Colleen stood in our kitchen and assigned tasks like she had been waiting for a disaster to organize. Dana would handle meal trains. Ellis would take Graham to Tuesday appointments. Colleen would sit with him during infusions. I listened with one hand on the back of Graham's chair. Graham said, "Helena's is handling the schedule." Colleen gave a bright little laugh. "Of course, but she can't do everything." "No," Graham said, "but she decides." The room went quiet for half a second. It was the kind of quiet that tells you more than the argument would have. From that day on, Colleen helped when helping made her visible. She came to the first chemo appointment in a navy pantsuit and introduced herself to the nurses as Graham's mother before I had finished checking him in. She brought a blanket embroidered with his initials and acted wounded when Graham used the old green one from home because it smelled like our laundry detergent. She posted vague updates online with folded hands emojis and never once mentioned that I was the one sleeping in the recliner beside him after the nausea hit. I did not want credit, I wanted cooperation. There is a difference, and Colleen counted on people not noticing. My days became measured by pill bottles and school bells. 6:30, anti-nausea medication. 7:10, Ivy's braid. 7:25, Theo yelling that his sock felt wrong. 8:05, school drop-off. 9:30, oncology portal. Noon, insurance call. 2:15, pharmacy. 3:40, pickup. 5, soup or toast or whatever Graham could manage. 7:30, baths. 8, stories. 9, temperature check. Midnight, laundry. 2 in the morning, Graham awake and scared but trying not to show me. At work, I moved to remote. My manager, Anita, sent me a message that said, "Do what you can. Your job is here." That one sentence did more for me than half the speeches people gave. Colleen's version of care always came with a witness. Ruth Kim's did not. Ruth lived next door in a white ranch house with a red mailbox and wind chimes shaped like spoons. She was 72, widowed, Korean-American, and a retired court clerk. The first time she brought food after Graham's diagnosis, she did not ring the bell. She left a container of rice porridge on the porch with a note taped to the lid. "Mealed. No onions. Text me if the kids need pickup." I texted, "Thank you," she replied. "No need. I'm awake early. That was all." She became part of our days the way good people do, without announcing herself. She picked up Ivy when an infusion ran late. She sat on our porch with Theo while I cleaned vomit from the bathroom floor. She remembered that Graham hated grape-flavored medicine. She never said, "You're so strong," which was good, because by then I had started to hate that sentence. Strong had become the word people used when they wanted to leave me alone with something heavy. One evening in January, after the second treatment failed, Graham sat at the kitchen table with a stack of insurance forms and a pen between his fingers. His hair had thinned. His wedding ring slid too loosely on his hand. I was rinsing soup bowls at the sink while Ivy practiced spelling words in the living room, and Theo drove toy cars along the baseboard. Graham said, "Keep copies of everything." I turned off the water. "I do, I know." He rubbed his thumb over the pen. "But I mean everything." I looked at him then. Really looked. "What happened?" He shook his head. "Nothing I can't handle." That detail stayed with me. The way he said it. Not nothing. Not don't worry. Nothing I can't handle. 2 weeks later, Colleen asked me in the clinic waiting room whether Graham had updated his will. I was filling out a medication reconciliation sheet. "That's between me and Graham." Her mouth pinched. "I'm his mother. I know. You wouldn't understand what this is like for me." I looked at Graham through the glass wall of the infusion room. His eyes were closed. The IV pump clicked beside him. "No," I said, carefully. "I understand what it's like for me." Colleen leaned closer. "Don't get territorial, Helena. It isn't attractive." I kept writing. "Potassium supplement, daily, mouth rinse, as needed, pain medication, every 6 hours." There are moments when you know someone has shown you who they are, but you still keep making space for who you hoped they might become. The week before Graham died, he had a better day. Not good. Better. He ate half a piece of toast and sat on the back porch wrapped in the old green blanket while the children showed him how the first crocuses were coming up near the fence. Colleen came by without calling. She had a folder in her hand and Dana behind her carrying a bakery box. I opened the door and said, "He's resting." "He's my son," Colleen said. "He is resting." Dana rolled her eyes. "Hell, we brought pastries. We're not criminals." Graham heard their voices and called weakly from the porch. "It's okay. I let them in. They stayed too long." Colleen sat beside him and cried into a tissue. Dana walked around the kitchen opening cabinets like she was inspecting the life I had built. I stood near the sink, arms folded, watching Graham's face get paler by the minute. At one point, Colleen lowered her voice, but not enough. "You need to think about the children," she said. Graham said, "I am if Helena falls apart. She won't. You don't know that. I know my wife." Dana came into the kitchen then and asked loudly where we kept serving plates. I turned away for 2 seconds. When I looked back, Colleen had one hand on Graham's wrist and the folder open on her lap. He pulled his hand away. "Mom," he said, and his voice had a hard edge I had not heard in months. "No." I walked over. "What is that?" Colleen closed the folder. "Nothing, just information." Graham looked at me. His eyes were tired but clear. "She's leaving." Colleen stood so fast the tissue fell to the porch floor. "You are making a mistake." "No," he said. "I made my decision. I did not ask enough questions that night. I wish I had. I was tired." And Graham was shaking. And Theo had spilled orange juice on the hallway rug. And Ivy was asking whether Dad would come to her spring concert. Survival narrows the room. You handle what is screaming loudest. Graham died 6 days later at 3:16 in the morning, as I was holding his left hand. The children were asleep down the hall. Ruth was on our couch because the hospice nurse had told me not to be alone that night. Colleen arrived 20 minutes after he was gone and made a sound that filled the house. I do not judge her for that sound. She lost her son. Pain is not always graceful. But before the funeral home came, before the sun was up, before Ivy and Theo knew their father was gone, Colleen stood in my kitchen and said, "We need to talk about where the children will be staying while you recover." I looked at her. "They'll be staying here, with me." She touched the back of a chair like she needed balance. "Helena, be reasonable." Ruth came in from the living room carrying 2 mugs of untouched tea. She did not speak. She just stood beside me. Colleen saw her and stopped. I filed that away without knowing why. Colleen could say almost anything to me in private, but an outside witness changed her posture. The funeral was on March 18th at St. Mark's, the brick church Graham had attended as a boy and avoided as an adult except on Christmas Eve. Colleen chose the hymns. I chose the photograph for the front of the program, Graham at the lake, holding Theo upside down while Ivy laughed with both hands over her mouth. Colleen wanted a formal portrait. I said no. The morning was cold and bright. Ivy wore a navy dress with white tights. Theo wore a clip-on tie and kept asking if Daddy could hear the music. I answered every question honestly enough to be kind and simply enough to be useful. At the cemetery, when the minister said dust to dust, my knees went soft. I did not faint. I did not collapse. I bent forward because the sound of dirt on the casket hit something in me I did not have a name for. Ruth was on one side of me. Graham's best friend Marcus was on the other. They held my elbows until I straightened. Colleen watched from beside the grave, her black veil lifted, her face still. Later, she would turn that moment into evidence. At the reception in the church hall, she moved from table to table, accepting sympathy like she had hosted the death. Dana refreshed the coffee urns and told people I was resting in the back. I was not resting. I was in the children's Sunday school room with Ivy, who had locked herself in a bathroom stall because someone told her she was the little lady of the house now. I sat on the tile floor outside the stall in my funeral dress and said, "You are 9. You are not the lady of anything. You are Ivy. That is enough." She opened the door after a while. When we came out, Colleen was speaking to Graham's old youth pastor. She stopped when she saw me. So did Dana. I saw a look pass between them. It was quick. It was nothing I could prove. But I had spent 12 years reading faces across conference tables when claimants realized the document in front of them had a second page. That look had weight. The next morning, I packed lunches. I wanted the children to stay home. Ivy wanted to go to school because her teacher had a guinea pig named Pickle, and she said Pickle would wonder. Theo wanted whatever Ivy wanted. So I made sandwiches. I wrote their names on juice boxes. I put Graham's sweatshirt in the washing machine and then took it back out because I could not bear to lose the smell yet. At 7:58, the doorbell rang. The process server handed me the petition. Colleen said her sentence. Ella stared at the porch light. Dana sat in Colleen's car at the curb, passenger window cracked. Watching like this was theater. I looked at the first page, emergency petition for temporary custody. Petitioners, Colleen Ward and Ellis Ward. Respondent, Helena Marie Ward. Minor children, Ivy Claire Ward and Theodore Graham Ward. There are words that look sterile on paper and violent in your hands. Ivy came to the hallway behind me. Mom? I folded the papers closed. Ruth's front door opened next door. She stepped out in a gray cardigan and house slippers, taking in the scene without asking one unnecessary question. Colleen saw Ivy and softened her voice. Sweetheart, Grandma is just trying to make sure you and Theo are safe. I said, go get your backpack, Ivy. Colleen turned back to me. Don't make this harder on them. I did not answer right away. I was looking at the affidavit of service clipped behind the petition. It said I had been served at 6:18 p.m. at my residence, but it was 8:01 in the morning. The porch light was still on because I had forgotten to turn it off after the long night. That detail stayed with me. Helena, Colleen said, did you hear me? I looked at her. I heard you. You need help. I need you off my porch. Her face changed, not much, just enough. Ellis took half a step forward. Colleen, not today. For 1 second, I thought he might do it. I thought grief had maybe broken open some room in him where decency could get through. He looked at me, and his eyes were wet. Colleen turned her head slowly. Not today. When, Ellis? After something happens to the children. He swallowed. Then he stepped back. That was the almost moment. I did not name it that then. I only felt something inside me go quiet. Ruth walked across the lawn and said, I can take the children to school. Colleen looked her up and down. This is family business, Ruth said. Children still need to be at school by 8:30. It was such a plain sentence. That is what made it powerful. No speech, no accusation, just the next right thing. I knelt in front of Ivy and Theo. Theo had his blue lunch bag against his chest, whale patch facing out. Ivy's eyes moved between the adults. Mrs. Kim is going to take you today, I said. I'll pick you up. Are you coming too? Theo asked. Not this morning, buddy. Colleen made a small wounded noise, like I was depriving her of a scene. I zipped Theo's jacket. I smoothed Ivy's hair. I watched Ruth clip Theo's mitten to his backpack, even though his hands were already in his pockets. She loaded them into her old Subaru and waited until their doors were closed before she turned back to me. I wrote down the license plate, she said quietly. Whose? She nodded toward the process server who was walking to his car. I don't think I need that, I said. You might. I did not know it yet, but she was right. Once the children were gone, Colleen stepped closer. You can make this easier by agreeing to temporary placement. No one wants to humiliate you. I looked at the papers in my hand. You filed this before the funeral. Her mouth tightened. We did what Graham would have wanted. Do not say his name to me right now. Dana got out of the car then, heels clicking on the driveway. This is exactly what we mean. You're reactive. I almost laughed. It would have sounded ugly, so I did not. Colleen reached toward the papers as if to straighten them. There are letters, Helena. From Graham. He knew you wouldn't manage. Something cold moved through me then. Not panic. Recognition. What letters? Colleen's eyes flicked to Dana. Dana looked away. You'll see them in court, Colleen said. I closed the door. For a full minute, I stood in the front hall with the custody petition in one hand and Theo's backup napkin in the other. It had a heart drawn in blue marker. My heart, not Graham's. The lines were shakier. Then I locked the door and called Graham's estate attorney. His name was Paul Merritt, and his office was above a credit union downtown. He had handled our wills after Theo was born and later helped Graham organize his medical directives. His receptionist answered on the second ring. When Paul came on the line, I said, Colleen served me with a custody petition. He went silent, then he said, Did she mention letters? I sat down on the bottom stair. Yes. There was another pause. I heard paper move on his end. Helena, he said carefully, I need you to come in today. Bring the petition. Bring any envelope Graham gave you. And do not respond to Colleen in writing. What envelope? The blue one from my office. I looked toward the small desk in the kitchen, where I had stacked sympathy cards, school forms, and unpaid bills. Beneath a mass card from Colleen's church group was a sealed navy envelope, with my name written in Graham's handwriting. I had seen it the day before, and at Sudus it was another insurance form. Graham had told me, near the end, Paul has one last thing for you if anything gets noisy. I hated that phrase. if anything gets noisy, as if death were not loud enough. Now I stared at my name on the envelope and felt the house tilt slightly. "What is it?" I asked Paul. "Bring it unopened," he said. "And Helena, call a family attorney. I'm going to give you a name." That was how I met Keisha Bell. Keisha's office was not fancy. It was on the second floor of a narrow building between a barber shop and a tax preparer. The waiting room had blue chairs, a water cooler, and children's drawings pinned to a corkboard. I arrived at noon wearing the same black dress from the funeral because I had not thought to change. My hair was still pinned badly. I had the custody petition, Graham's envelope, and a grocery receipt from the night before folded into my coat pocket for no reason except that my hands needed something. Keisha was 40-something, with silver at her temples and the calmest voice I had ever heard from someone who made a living in conflict. She read the petition without interrupting. Paul sat beside me, jaw tight. When she got to the requested relief, her eyebrows lifted. "They're asking for temporary custody," she said, "and authority over financial decisions related to the minor children." I nodded because I had read those words 5 times. Keisha looked at me. "Tell me about the life insurance." Graham had a policy through work and a private term policy. The total is $2 million. It's designated for the children through a trust structure Paul helped set up. I'm the manager until they're adults, with annual reporting to the estate accountant. Paul nodded. "Correct." Keisha tapped the page. "Your in-laws know that? They know there was insurance. They don't know the details." Paul exhaled through his nose. "Colleen asked me 3 times if the children's money would be supervised by family." Keisha's mouth flattened. Family meaning her. I felt embarrassed then, which made no sense. I had not done anything wrong, but there is something humiliating about seeing greed laid out in black and white when you are still wearing funeral shoes. Keisha turned a page. "They claim you missed medical appointments for both children." "I didn't. They claim you left Theo unattended overnight." "I never did. They claim you had a breakdown at the cemetery and had to be physically carried away." I bent forward. Ruth and Marcus helped me stand. "They claim Graham wrote 4 letters expressing concern about your stability and asking his parents to intervene." I looked at Paul. He removed his glasses and rubbed one eye. Graham anticipated that. The room went very still. Keisha said, "Open the envelope." My hands shook then. That was the first time that day. Not on the porch, not when Colleen said the sentence, not when Dana called me reactive. But opening Graham's envelope in a lawyer's office with a water stain on the ceiling, I shook so hard Keisha slid a letter opener toward me without comment. Inside was a short note in Graham's handwriting. "Hell, I hope you never need this. If you do, I'm sorry. I know my mother. I love you. I trust you. Everything important is with Paul. G." There was also a small black flash drive in a plastic sleeve and a folded copy of a notarized document. I did not read the whole document then. Keisha did. Paul watched me instead of the paper, which told me the paper was worse than I wanted it to be. Keisha finally looked up. "We are not showing this to them yet." I wiped my face with the heel of my hand. "Why?" "Because right now they can still adjust their story. I want them committed to it." I understood that language. In my work, people often changed explanations when they discovered what records existed. If you showed the discrepancy too soon, they had time to build a bridge over it. If you waited, sometimes they walked straight into the gap. Keisha said, "You're a claims analyst, right?" "Yes, then you know what we need." "Timeline," I said. "Originals, source records, chain of custody." For the first time since Graham died, someone looked at me like my mind was still useful, and my grief did not cancel it. "Exactly," Keisha said. Over the next 3 weeks, I became 2 versions of myself. One version packed lunches, washed pajamas, answered questions about death with simple sentences, and sat on the bathroom floor while Theo cried because he could not remember Graham's voice, unless he watched videos on my phone. The other version built a file. I printed school attendance records showing Ivy and Theo had not missed a day. Except Graham's funeral and 2 medical appointments, both documented. I got letters from their pediatrician confirming appointments were kept and Medication instructions followed. I copied pharmacy receipts, meal schedules Ruth had helped maintain, text messages where Colleen refused specific offers to visit, unless she could take the children alone, and messages where Dana accused me of gatekeeping grief. I made a timeline starting 6 months before Graham died, not because Keisha asked for that much, because once I started, the pattern became visible. January 10th, Colleen asks about wills. January 22nd, Colleen brings unknown folder to porch. Graham refuses. February 2nd, Dana texts, Mom says you're not thinking clearly about what comes next. February 6th, Graham has appointment outside normal infusion schedule. February 7th, Graham says, keep copies of everything. February 14th, Colleen texts Ellis in a group chat by accident. He won't sign while she's hovering. That one made my hands go cold. I had missed it when it came in because Graham had a fever that night. The message had sat in my phone for weeks, one line in a thread about soup and pharmacy pickups. Colleen deleted it on her end, but not on mine. I sent it to Keisha. She replied, good, keep going. The 4 letters arrived through Colleen's attorney in Discovery. They were copies, not originals. Each had Graham's name typed at the top, and a signature at the bottom that looked close enough to hurt. They claimed Graham feared I was emotionally unstable, that I had failed to maintain household order, that the children would be safer with his parents, until Helena regains composure, and that he wanted Colleen and Ellis to take all necessary legal steps. I read them at my kitchen table after the children were asleep. The first thing I noticed was not the signature. It was the phrase, household order. Graham never talked like that. He said the house looked like a laundry basket exploded. He said Theo's Legos were a foot injury waiting to happen. He said our beautiful chaos. When the kids left crayons in the silverware drawer, he would never write household order. The second thing was worse. All 4 letters used 2 spaces after each period. Graham had not done that since college. Dana did. I had seen it in every passive-aggressive email she sent about holiday plans. That did not prove anything by itself. Small details rarely do, but small details tell you where to look. I looked at metadata on the PDF copies. The scanned documents had been created on March 16th at 9:12 p.m., 2 days before the funeral. The author field said D.W. Tate, Dana Ward Tate. When I sent that to Keisha, she called instead of texting. Do not mention the to one, she said. I won't. Not Ellis. Not Lorna. Not even Ruth yet. Okay. And Helena, yes, you are doing well. I stood in the kitchen with the dishwasher humming, and one of Theo's socks stuck to my sleeve from static. For some reason, that almost made me cry. I said, I don't feel like I am. You don't have to feel like it for it to be true. I did not turn that into a lesson. I just wrote it on a sticky note and put it inside the folder. Colleen tried to contact me constantly. She sent messages that alternated between pity and threat. You are overwhelmed. Let us help. Graham would be heartbroken to see you shut it out. The children need Ward's stability. Do not force us to tell the court everything. Then, after I did not answer, you are proving our point. Dana posted a photograph from the funeral on social media. It showed Colleen leaning over Graham's casket, hand pressed to the wood. The caption said, a mother's love never ends. We will protect what he loved most. I did not comment. I took a screenshot. The guardian ad litem assigned to the children was a woman named Margaret Cho, no relation to Ruth, with cropped gray hair and reading glasses on a chain. She came to the house on a rainy Tuesday at 4. Ivy was at the table doing fractions. Theo was building a tower from cereal boxes because I had not yet taken out the recycling. I apologized for the mess. Margaret looked around. I've seen unsafe homes. This is not one. She interviewed me first, then Ivy, then Theo, gently, in the living room with crayons between them. I stayed in the kitchen where I could see but not hear everything. That was harder than court, in some ways. Watching strangers ask your children about safety makes you want to open your chest and show them every night you stayed awake. After Margaret left, Ivy came into the kitchen and said, Grandma said I can have a pink room at her house. I froze with one hand on the sink. When did she say that? At the funeral. Aunt Dana said there's space because Cousin Maddie doesn't sleep over anymore. Grandma said I could bring my books, and Theo could have the room with the train lamp. I turned off the faucet. Ivy looked worried. Was that wrong? No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. That was when I understood Colleen had not filed in panic. She had prepared bedrooms. I stepped onto the back porch and called Keisha. Rain ticked against the gutter. Ruth's wind chimes moved next door. Keisha listened without interrupting. Then she said, "We'll ask about that. Will it matter? It helps show intent. Intent. Another clean word for something ugly." The weekend before the hearing, Ellis came by alone. I saw him through the front window, standing on the porch in his brown cardigan, holding a paper bag from Miller's Bakery. Graham used to love their cinnamon twists. For a second, I wanted not to answer. Then I thought of the almost moment on the porch, the way he had said, "Not today," and I opened the door. He looked older than he had at the funeral. "I brought these for the kids. They're with Ruth at the library." "Oh." He held the bag out. I did not take it. "Helena," he said, "this has gotten out of hand." "Yes." He flinched a little. "I didn't want it this way," he said, "but you signed the petition." His eyes filled. "Colleen said if I didn't, it would look like I didn't care about Graham's children. You signed a petition saying I'm unfit. I know you love them." That was not the question. He looked past me into the house. His eyes landed on the row of children's shoes by the hall tree, Graham's boots still beside them because I had not moved them yet. He whispered, "He didn't want it like this." Everything in me went still. What did he want? Ellis's mouth opened. Then Colleen's car turned into the driveway. Ellis closed his mouth so fast it was almost a click. Colleen got out, furious. "Ellis, what are you doing?" He stepped back from my door. "I was just bringing pastries." I watched him choose it. Not in theory, not someday. Right then, he chose the easier lie. Colleen came up the steps. Our attorney said no direct contact. I looked at Ellis. "You should go." He said my name, but softly, uselessly. I closed the door before he could decide whether to finish the sentence. After that, I stopped hoping Ellis would save anything. Hope can become one more place you wait for people who already left. The hearing was set for April 9th at 9 in the morning in courtroom 4C. The night before, I ironed Ivy's school uniform and Theo's dinosaur pajamas because he insisted they needed to look flat. Then I caught myself and laughed for the first time in weeks. Not because anything was funny, but because life still kept asking for small, ridiculous tasks. I put the iron away, sat on Graham's side of the bed, and played a voice memo he had recorded for the kids 2 months before he died. "Hey, Bug," he said to Ivy. "Remember, fractions are just pizza with rules." Then to Theo, "Buddy, be kind to your mom. She knows where the snacks are." I pressed the phone to my chest. At 7:30 the next morning, Ruth knocked once and let herself in with the key I had given her during Graham's illness. She wore navy slacks and a white blouse. In one hand she held her car keys. In the other, Theo's blue lunch bag with the whale patch. "You forgot to eat," she said. "I'm not hungry. I didn't ask." Inside were crackers, a banana, a hard-boiled egg, and a folded paper towel. On the paper towel she had drawn a tiny crooked heart. I stared at it. Ruth shrugged. "Mine are not as good as Graham's." I could not speak for a second. She set the lunch bag on the counter. "Children are ready. Ivy has her math folder. Theo has one mitten because the other is apparently living its own life. I'll take them to school, then pick them up. You go." "Thank you," I said. She touched my wrist once. Tell the truth slowly, that was Ruth. Practical even when she was kind. The courthouse smelled like floor polish and wet coats. Family court was on the 3rd floor, past the metal detector, past a vending machine that hummed like it was tired of everyone. Keisha met me outside courtroom 4C with a black leather folder under her arm. I wore a dark gray dress, not black. Keisha had suggested it. "You don't have to look like you're still at the funeral," she said. "You're allowed to look like you came prepared." Paul stood with her. He was there for the estate issues, not to argue custody. He squeezed my shoulder lightly. "Ready?" Keisha asked. "No. Good enough." Inside, Colleen had already arrived. She sat at the front with Ellis on one side and Dana on the other. Their attorney, Mr. Voss, was a tall man with silver hair and a voice made for country club dining rooms. Behind them sat 8 people from Colleen's church, 2 of Graham's cousins, Lorna Ward, and a woman I recognized vaguely from the clinic. She sat in the back row with a plain canvas bag on her lap, looking at no one. I did not place her then, not fully. Colleen turned when I walked in. Her eyes went over my dress, my face, my empty hands. She looked disappointed that I had not arrived shattered. Dana whispered something. Colleen's mouth curved. My mother smiled like she had already won. Colleen was not my mother, but in that moment, I understood how women like her borrow the authority of the word whenever it suits them. Keisha placed a folder on our table. I saw colored tabs. School, medical, texts, financial, directive. The last tab was turned inward, hidden from the gallery. I sat with my hands in my lap. Courtrooms are not like television. There is less drama and more waiting. People shuffle papers. Phones are silenced. Attorneys lean close and whisper. The clock above the judge made a soft clicking sound every time the minute hand moved. When Judge Marisol Calder entered, everyone stood. She was maybe in her late 50s, with dark hair pulled back and glasses low on her nose. She did not look warm or cold. She looked awake. That comforted me. Mr. Voss spoke first. He made Colleen and Ellis sound like saints and me sound like a loose railing on a staircase. He said the petition was not punitive. He said the wards were acting from love. He said my grief had become functionally impairing. He said the children had lost one parent and could not risk effectively losing another. I kept my eyes on the wood grain of the table. Then he introduced the letters, 4 pages, each in a clear sleeve, each marked as an exhibit. Colleen dabbed her eyes with a tissue, as if the paper itself had injured her. Mr. Voss said, "These writings demonstrate that Mr. Graham Ward had serious concerns regarding his wife's ability to parent following his death." The judge looked down at the documents. "Are originals available?" Mr. Voss hesitated. "My client has copies, Your Honor. The originals were reportedly misplaced in the confusion after Mr. Ward's passing." Keisha made a note. I watched Dana. Her left hand went to the necklace at her throat. She twisted the chain twice. That was when I knew she was more involved than typing. She knew exactly where the originals were, or why they did not exist. Colleen took the stand after Ellis. Ellis's testimony was weak and sad. He said he worried about me. He said he had seen me cry. He said Colleen was better able to provide a stable extended family environment. He did not say I was a bad mother. He did not say I neglected the children. Under Keisha's questions, he admitted he had never seen me leave either child unattended, never known me to miss a pediatrician appointment, never known the children to go without food, clothing, school, or medical care. Keisha asked, "Mr. Ward, did your son ever tell you he wanted his parents to have custody of Ivy and Theo?" Ellis's throat moved. Colleen stared at him. He said, he was concerned. "That was not my question." Mr. Voss objected. The judge allowed Keisha to continue. Keisha repeated, "Did Graham ever tell you he wanted Helena removed as the children's custodial parent?" Ellis looked at me then. His face broke a little. "No," he said. Colleen turned red. It should have helped. It did, legally, but emotionally it felt like being handed a cup of water after the house had burned. Ellis had known enough to say no from the beginning. He waited until a judge made him. Then Colleen took the stand. She wore pearls. I noticed because she had worn the same pearls to my wedding and told me, while fastening my veil, that Graham liked simple girls. At the time, I thought she meant it as approval. Later, I understood she meant simple as manageable. Mr. Voss guided her gently. She spoke about Graham as a boy, Graham with scraped knees, Graham reading under blankets, Graham calling her from college, Graham bringing me home and hoping we would all blend. She cried at the right points. The church friends behind her sniffled. Then Mr. Voss asked about me. Colleen sighed. Helena loved Graham. I will never deny that. But love does not mean capacity. I felt Keisha shift beside me, just slightly. Colleen continued. In the last months, she became controlling. She restricted access. She kept information from us. The house was chaotic. The children were anxious. Graham saw it. Mr. Voss asked, Did Graham communicate concerns to you? Yes. How privately at first, then in writing, and are these the writings you provided? Yes. And what did Graham ask you to do? Colleen closed her eyes briefly, like the memory was too holy to touch. He asked me to protect his children if Helena couldn't. The room was very quiet. I looked at the clock, 9:54. That time stayed with me. Keisha did not move toward the folder yet. Mr. Voss asked, "Did he sign these letters willingly?" Yes. Did he understand what he was signing? Absolutely. Did Helena know about them? No. He was afraid she would become angry. Keisha wrote one word on her legal pad, not a yellow one. White. College ruled. Ordinary. The word was afraid. Colleen saw her write it. Her chin lifted. Mr. Voss sat down. The judge turned to Keisha, cross. Keisha rose slowly. She did not pace. She did not raise her voice. "Mrs. Ward," she said, "you testified that Graham gave you these 4 letters." Yes. When? About 2 weeks before he passed. Where? In my kitchen. At your home? Yes. Was anyone else present? Colleen paused. Ellis was in the house. In the kitchen? I don't remember. Was Dana present? No. Dana's chain twisted again. Keisha nodded. And Graham was well enough to travel to your home. Colleen blinked. He had good days. Was this one of them? Yes. He was emotional but clear. Did he drive himself? No. I picked him up. At what time? I don't remember exactly. Morning, afternoon, evening, afternoon. Keisha turned one page. Mrs. Ward, do you recall sending Helena a text that day at 2:14 p.m. asking whether Graham's fever had broken? Colleen's eyes narrowed. I sent many texts. Do you recall Helena responding that Graham was asleep and his temperature was 102.4? I was worried about him, of course. So when you testified that he was in your kitchen that afternoon signing legal letters, was that before or after the fever of 102.4? Mr. Voss stood. Objection, argumentative. Sustained, the judge said. Rephrase. Keisha looked back at Colleen. What time did Graham leave Helena's house with you? Colleen's lips parted, closed. I don't remember. Did you pick him up in your car? Yes. Do you have any record of that? No. Did you tell Helena? No, Graham asked me not to. Because he was afraid of her? Yes. Keisha nodded again, as if this all made perfect sense. Mrs. Ward, you also testified that Graham signed these letters willingly. He did. You are certain? Yes. No one pressured him. No. No one presented him with documents he refused to sign. Colleen's face changed. There it was, tiny, fast, gone. I don't know what you mean, she said. Keisha let the silence sit. Then she asked, did you bring a folder to Graham and Helena's home on March 10th? Colleen looked at Mr. Voss. He looked down at his notes. I may have brought medical information, not custody documents, no. Not guardianship forms? No, not proposed letters? No, I heard someone shift in the gallery. Maybe Lorna, maybe Dana, I did not look. Keisha walked back to our table and rested one hand on the folder, not opening it yet. Mrs. Ward, did your son ever tell you that he had signed a directive regarding custody of his children? Colleen gave a small laugh, sharp enough to cut. There was no directive. You're certain? If there were, I would know. And why is that? Because I was his mother. Keisha looked at the judge. Your Honor, respondent moves to admit a notarized guardianship directive and accompanying video statement executed by Graham Ward on February 6th. Of this year, we also have the notary present to authenticate. The air changed. Colleen turned toward Mr. Voss. What is she talking about, Mr. Voss did not answer. The woman in the back row stood. That was when I recognized her. Clinic hallway, a Scraestis, canvas bag. She had once handed Graham a cup of water while Colleen argued with a receptionist about appointment access. Keisha said, please state your name. The woman's voice was steady. Nadia Patel. And your profession? I am a licensed mobile notary and a palliative care social worker. Colleen stared at her like she had been betrayed by furniture. Keisha asked to approach. The judge reviewed the document, the notary stamp, and the foundation. Mr. Voss objected, but not strongly. I think by then he understood he had been handed a case with a locked door inside it. Nadia testified briefly. She had met Graham on February 6th in a clinic conference room. He had requested the appointment through Paul Merritt. His treating physician had documented that he was alert, oriented, and capable of making decisions that morning. Nadia had checked his identification. She had watched him sign the written directive. She had notarized it in her journal. She had also witnessed his recorded statement, made voluntarily. Keisha asked, "Was Colleen Ward present?" "No." "Did Graham Ward ask that she be informed?" "No." "Did he say why?" Mr. Voss objected. The judge allowed limited response. Nadia said, "He stated that he did not want pressure from his mother affecting his wife or children." Colleen whispered, "That is a lie." The judge looked over her glasses. "Mrs. Ward." Colleen pressed her lips together. Then Keisha connected a small device to the court monitor. I had not watched the video before that day. Keisha had offered. Paul had offered. I said no. Not because I was brave. Because I knew if I heard Graham's voice alone in an office, I might spend the whole hearing waiting to break. I wanted to hear it when it mattered. The screen flickered. Graham appeared seated at a conference table, under harsh clinic lights. He wore the blue flannel shirt I had washed so many times the elbows had gone soft. His face was thinner, his eyes were tired, but he was Graham. My Graham. He looked into the camera like he was trying to see past it. For 1 second, the courtroom disappeared. Then his voice filled the room. "My name is Graham Michael Ward. Today is February 6th. I am making this statement with counsel arranged through Paul Merritt and with a notary, present because I want there to be no confusion after my death." Colleen made a sound. Dana grabbed her wrist. Graham continued. "My wife, Helena Ward, is the mother of our children, Ivy Claire Ward and Theodore Graham Ward. She is their parent. She is their home. I trust her completely to raise them if I am not here." My hands were flat on my lap. I could not feel my fingers. He took a breath on the video. It rattled slightly. I knew that breath. I had counted that breath in the dark. "I am aware that my mother, Colleen Ward, has expressed concerns about Helena's ability to continue parenting after my death. I do not share those concerns. Helena has managed my care, our household, our finances, and our children's needs with more strength and patience than anyone has had a right to ask of her." Colleen shook her head slowly. Graham said, "I have been asked, directly and indirectly, to sign papers that would allow my parents to take custody or control of my children's finances after my death. I have refused. I am refusing now on the record." The judge looked at Colleen. Colleen looked at the table. Graham's voice stayed calm. "If any letter, statement, or document appears after my death, claiming that I wanted my parents to remove my children from Helena's custody, that statement should be treated as unauthorized unless it is confirmed by Paul Merritt and by Helena herself." Dana whispered, "Oh my God." Graham leaned forward slightly. "I love my parents, but love does not give anyone the right to use my death to take my children from their mother." That was not the moment that broke Colleen, not yet. The moment came after Graham paused, swallowed, and said, the sentence that made every person in that courtroom understand he had seen her clearly. "If anyone tells you Helena is too broken to raise our children, ask them what they gain if you believe it." The silence after that was not empty. It was full of Colleen's own words coming back to her. A woman who has to be carried through a funeral can't carry 2 children. Keisha did not look at me. She did not need to. Graham finished by naming me sole guardian, naming Paul's office as holder of the written directive, and stating that the children's insurance funds were to be managed for their education, housing, medical needs, and future, not by anyone seeking custody after his death. He smiled then, just barely. "Hell," he said, and my throat closed. "I'm sorry I had to make this. I hope you never need it. If you do, I know you'll be sitting there quietly, letting everyone talk too long. I love you. Take the kids home." The video ended. No one moved. The court monitor went dark. I stared at my reflection in the black screen. I looked pale, tired, still. Judge Calder removed her glasses and set them on the bench. "Ms. Bell, the written directive." Keisha handed it up. The judge reviewed it. Then she looked at Mr. Voss. "Counsel, I have serious concerns regarding the provenance of petitioner's exhibits." Mr. Voss stood slowly. "Your Honor, my clients provided those letters to my office. I was not aware of any conflicting directive. Colleen turned on him. They are real. Judge Calder's voice sharpened. Mrs. Ward, do not speak unless you are answering a question. Colleen stood anyway. He was sick. He didn't know what he was saying in that video. Nadia, still standing near the back, said nothing. She did not have to. Her testimony, the doctor's note, the notary journal, the date and the signature were already in the record. Keisha said, Your Honor, respondent asks that petitioner's 4 letters be preserved by the court, pending further review, including potential referral regarding fabrication of evidence. Dana went white. Colleen sat down hard. Ellis covered his face with one hand. Judge Calder said, The letters will be preserved. Petitioners are not to remove, alter, destroy, or attempt to substitute any related materials. Colleen leaned toward Mr. Voss, whispering frantically now. I caught only pieces. They can't, Dana just typed. He said. Dana hissed, Mom. Keisha heard it. So did the court reporter. So did I. There are mistakes people make because they are afraid. There are other mistakes they make because they thought fear belonged only to you. Judge Calder called a brief recess. The bailiff directed everyone to remain available. I walked into the hallway with Keisha and Paul. My knees felt strange, like they belonged to someone else. Ruth was not there. She was picking up my children from school. I wanted her there for 1 second, then was glad she was not. Some things should not have more witnesses than they need. Paul handed me a bottle of water, I said. He looked tired. Paul's face softened. He was. Did he know that she might do this? I nodded. Paul looked toward the courtroom doors. He hoped he was wrong. I closed my eyes. Of course he did. That was Graham. He could design storm drains for worst-case flooding and still hope people would choose better than they had shown him. When we went back in, Colleen did not look at me. Dana looked furious. Ellis looked ruined. Judge Calder's ruling was measured and clear. The emergency custody petition was denied. The children would remain in my sole custody. Colleen and Ellis were not to remove the children from school, contact them directly, or appear at my home pending further order. Any visitation request would need to be properly filed and reviewed in light of the evidence presented. The request for authority over the children's financial interests was denied. The existing insurance arrangement would remain in place, subject to the oversight already established through Graham's estate documents. Then the judge looked at Colleen. Mrs. Ward, this court is not a place to launder grief into control. You brought serious allegations against a mother days after her husband's funeral. Those allegations now appear to rest, in part, on documents whose authenticity is in question. Mr. Voss lowered his head. Colleen's face crumpled, but not in grief. In calculation, I could see the shift happen. Her shoulders rounded. Her mouth trembled, her eyes filled. Your Honor, she said. We were only trying to keep them close to Graham. There it was, the pivot. From accusation to love. From theft to tradition. From forged letters to family unity. Judge Calder said, You had counsel, you had process. You chose this filing. Colleen turned toward me. Helena, please, we're family. I looked at her then. Not at the pearls, not at the tissue. At her. She had called me unstable. She had tried to take Ivy and Theo. She had used Graham's death like a door she could open. Now she wanted family to mean I would help her close it quietly. I did not answer, sir. That made her more desperate. You don't understand what it's like to lose a son, she said. No, I said. My voice sounded rough, but steady. And you don't understand what it means to honor one. The judge warned her again not to address me directly. Colleen stepped around the counsel table anyway. Helena, don't do this in front of everyone. The bailiff moved. Keisha put one hand slightly in front of me, not touching, just there. Colleen's church friends stared at their laps. Lorna was crying silently in the second row. Dana whispered, Mom, sit down, but Colleen shook her off. You are punishing us, Colleen said to me. You are taking our grandchildren. The bailiff said, Mom, they are Ward children, Colleen said. That was when Judge Calder's voice cut through the room. Mrs. Ward, you will step back now. Colleen did not. The bailiff escorted her out by the elbow. Not roughly, not dramatically, just firmly, as if removing someone who had mistaken public space for personal property. Minutes earlier, Graham's voice had filled the courtroom. Now Colleen's heels clicked across the floor, fast and uneven. Dana followed, crying angry tears. Ellis stayed seated for another few seconds. Then he stood and looked at me. "I'm sorry," he said. I believed that he was sorry in that moment. I also knew he was sorry after the harm had failed. "That is not the same as being safe," I said. "You should go with your wife." He flinched. Then he went. When the courtroom emptied, Keisha sat beside me instead of across from me. "You did well," she said. "I didn't do anything. You let the evidence do what it needed to do." Paul gathered the documents. Nadia approached with her canvas bag over her shoulder. I stood. She said, "Your husband was very clear that day. Thank you for being there." "He asked if he sounded too harsh," she said, "after the recording. He was worried about being unfair. That nearly undid me." I pressed my fingers to my mouth. Nadia's eyes were kind but not pitying. I told him clear is useful in legal matters. I laughed once, quietly, through tears. Graham would have liked that. In the hallway, Lorna waited near the vending machine. She held a tissue balled in her hand. "Elena," she said, "I should have said something sooner." I looked at her. She swallowed. "Colleen called me before the funeral. She said once Graham's gone, the family would handle you." I thought she was just grieving. I didn't know she'd go this far. I was too tired to be shocked. "Did you tell anyone?" She looked down. There was my answer. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I believe you." Her face lifted, hopeful. "But I can't use apologies as childcare," I said. It was plain. It was not cruel. It was also the end of something. Outside the courthouse, the air smelled like rain on concrete. I sat in my car for a minute before starting it. My phone had 11 unread messages, 3 from Colleen, 2 from Dana, 1 from Ellis, 5 from Ruth. Ruth's last message said, "Kids are eating waffles at my table." Ivy did her math. "Theo wants to know if judges wear pajamas under robes. No need to answer fast." I put my forehead on the steering wheel and cried then. Not the kind of crying Colleen had described in her petition. Not unsafe, not theatrical. Just grief finally finding a place where no one could use it against me. When I got home, Ruth had the porch light on. It was still daylight, but she had turned it on anyway. I walked into her kitchen through the side door. Ivy was at the table with syrup on her sleeve. Theo had powdered sugar on his chin. Ruth was washing a pan. Ivy looked up first. "Are we staying home?" I knelt beside her chair. "Yes." Theo slid off his chair and wrapped both arms around my neck. "Did the judge know, Daddy?" "Nobody." "Then how did she know?" I looked at Ruth. She turned off the faucet and gave me the room. "Daddy made sure people knew what he wanted," I said. And the judge listened. Ivy's eyes filled. "Did Grandma lie?" I sat back on my heels. There are questions children ask that deserve more care than adults ever gave the truth. "Yes," I said. "About important things." Ivy nodded once, like she had already known. "Are we in trouble?" Theo asked. "No. Is Grandma?" I pulled him closer. "The grown-ups are handling that." Ruth placed Theo's blue lunch bag on the counter. I had not noticed she had brought it back from my house. The whale patch was damp near the bottom where an ice pack had leaked. "You should take food home," she said. "I can cook." She looked at me. "I can microwave," I corrected. She packed rice, chicken, sliced apples, and 3 cookies in containers with green lids. She did not say, "You're strong." She did not say, "Everything happens for a reason." She handed me dinner and reminded Theo to put on both shoes. That night, after the children were asleep, I listened to Graham's video alone. Not the whole thing at first. I stopped when he said my name. I walked around the kitchen. I came back. I pressed play again. The second time, I heard something I had missed in court. At the end, after "Take the kids home," he looked down and smiled like Nadia had said something off camera. Then he added, softer, "And hell, don't let my mother turn your kindness into a lease." I paused the video. I stood there in the kitchen with the refrigerator humming and Graham's boots still by the door. Then I laughed until I cried because that was so exactly him. Too gentle for court, too sharp not to include. The official fallout came in pieces. Keisha told me the court preserved the letters and referred the matter for review. "Mr. Voss withdrew from representing Colleen and Ellis within the week. Dana deleted the funeral post, then deleted her entire account for a while, after someone from Colleen's church commented, "We heard Graham speak for himself." The process server issue mattered too. Ruth's license plate note led Keisha to request service records. The company had logged the papers as completed the night before, even though I was served the next morning. It turned out Colleen had been pushing for the earliest possible filing and someone had entered the wrong time to make the emergency timeline look cleaner. That alone would not have won the case, but it fit the pattern. Colleen had tried to make the paperwork look inevitable before I even knew there was a fight. Paul confirmed the insurance trust was protected. The money did not come to me as a prize. It came with rules, records, and responsibility, just as Graham wanted. Housing, education, medical care, counseling, future needs. I kept a spreadsheet because that was how my mind breathed when life got too large. Every receipt, every transfer, every account statement. Not because Colleen was watching anymore. Because my children deserved clean records. Colleen sent one long email through a new attorney 2 weeks after the hearing. It said she and Ellis wished to begin healing as a family. It said the courtroom had been emotionally charged. It said mistakes were made, though not by whom. It said denying grandparents access would only deepen the children's trauma. Keisha forwarded it to me with one line, "No response required." I read it twice anyway, then I archived it. Dana sent a text from a new number. "You got what you wanted. Hope you enjoy raising them alone." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I blocked the number. Ellis mailed birthday cards for the children in May. No return address, but I knew his handwriting. I gave the cards to Keisha. She held them under the contact restrictions until we had guidance. That sounds cold when I say it quickly. It did not feel cold. It felt like finally letting rules do the work my guilt had been doing. The hardest part was not missing Colleen. I did not miss Colleen. The hardest part was watching the children grieve the idea of grandparents they had, not fully understood. Theo asked for Grandma once because she used to buy him red licorice. Ivy stopped asking but started listening when cars slowed near the house. So I found them a counselor with soft sweaters and a basket of fidget toys. I told the school enough to keep them safe. I made pickup lists. I changed emergency contacts. I told the truth in pieces small enough for children to carry. Ruth stayed Ruth. She came on Wednesdays with library books. She taught Ivy how to make scallion pancakes, and Theo how to fold napkins into crooked boats. She never tried to become their grandmother. That may be why they trusted her. She accepted the place she had earned instead of reaching for a title. One Saturday in June, almost 3 months after Graham died, we went to the lake. It was the same lake from the funeral program photo. I had avoided it because grief makes maps out of ordinary places. But Ivy asked, and Theo wanted to skip rocks, and I was tired of letting pain decide every route. I packed the blue whale lunch bag. The zipper stuck halfway. Theo said, "Daddy could fix that." I said, "He could. Can we fix it? We can try." So we sat at the picnic table near the water with sandwiches, grapes, and a tiny screwdriver from Ruth's purse, because Ruth had everything in that purse except a spare moon. Theo held the zipper steady. Ivy read instructions from a phone video. Ruth supervised like a retired judge. I bent the metal tab gently until it caught. The zipper closed. Theo cheered like we had rebuilt a bridge. I looked at the whale patch, faded and fraying at the edge, and thought about the morning it had landed on the porch, while Colleen told me I could not carry my children. I thought about Ruth bringing it to court with food for me. I thought about Graham saying, "Take the kids home." I did. Not all at once. Not cleanly. But I did. The last time I saw Colleen in person was outside the courthouse in August, after a review hearing about contact restrictions. She looked smaller, though maybe that was only because I was no longer shrinking around her. Ellis was not with her. Dana waited near the elevators, arms crossed, pretending not to watch. Colleen approached me in the hallway. Keisha was speaking with Paul a few feet away. The bailiff was nearby. Colleen knew better than to touch me. "Helena," she said. I turned. She had changed tactics again. No pearls this time, soft sweater, no lipstick. A grandmother costume built out of humility. "I have lost my son," she said. "Please don't make me lose my grandchildren too." There were so many things I could have said. I could have said she should have thought of that before the forged letters. I could have said she did not lose them. She tried to take them and failed. I could have said Graham saw her clearly, and that was why he made the video. But my children were not served by my anger becoming a performance. So I said the only thing that needed saying. "I carried them, Colleen. You don't get to take them." Her face changed, not dramatically, not like a movie. Just enough for me to know the words had landed exactly where hers had once been. Then I walked away. By fall, the house sounded different. Not healed. Different. There were still bad nights. Theo still cried when he found one of Graham's old baseball caps in the closet. Ivy still got quiet whenever a father-daughter event flyer came home from school. I still reached for my phone to text Graham photographs of ordinary things. Theo asleep in a laundry basket, Ivy's first A on a math test, the ridiculous squirrel that kept stealing cherry tomatoes from the garden. But the fear changed. Colleen's car stopped slowing near the house. Dana's messages stopped. Ellis sent one letter to Keisha, asking whether he could apologize to the children someday. Keisha and I discussed it carefully. Someday is not never, but it is also not a door people get to open themselves. I went back to work full-time in October. Anita moved me onto a training team for fraud review because, as she put it, "You have an eye for the quiet inconsistencies." She did not ask for details. She did not need to. I sat in meetings and taught new analysts to look at dates, signatures, metadata, and language. I told them people often reveal themselves in the words they think no one will question. Then I came home and made spaghetti. That was my life. Not revenge, not triumph, a life. Homework at the table, bills paid on time, counseling appointments, birthday candles, porch lights, Ruth's wind chimes, Graham's voice in videos when we were ready to hear it. The blue lunch bag hanging on the hook by the door, zipper repaired, but still crooked. On the anniversary of Graham's death, I took the children to the cemetery in the morning. Ivy brought a drawing. Theo brought a rock shaped like a heart. I brought coffee in Graham's travel mug and stood there while the wind moved through the grass. I did not tell Graham thank you for protecting us. Not exactly, I said. You were right about copies. I could almost hear him laughing. Afterward, we went to Ruth's house. She had made soup and set 4 bowls on the table, then added a 5th small bowl near the center with crackers in it because Theo liked to serve himself. Ivy helped her fold napkins. Theo lined up toy cars along the windowsill. I stood in the doorway for a moment and watched. No one announced that we were family. No one had to. That evening, I put the funeral program, the court order, a printed still from Graham's video, and one repaired zipper pull from the lunch bag into a storage box. Not to live inside the past, just to know where the record was. Because some people will rewrite any story you leave unattended. That is the last lesson I will give in a sentence. Everything else is in the details. The blue whale lunch bag, the forged letters, the porch light Ruth turned on before we came home. That's my story. The blue whale lunch bag, 4 forged letters, and a small black video file my husband made when he knew I might one day need his voice in a room full of lies. If someone in your life only values you when you are useful, take this as your sign to look closely at who shows up when you have nothing to offer. And if this story stayed with you, leave a comment for the person who needed proof they were not crazy, not weak, and not alone.